All right, here we go. This is Jason Flame, and this is the Master Motivation Show, the last Master Motivation for 2021. Welcome to the show, and for those of you watching, please do us a favor and comment, share, get engaged in this conversation. We'll have a lot of fun today. I'm pleased to welcome Allie Alberigo today, so thank you for joining me on the show.
Hey, it's my absolute pleasure, man. Thank you very much for having me. I
Yeah.
saw the lineup of guests you have, so I feel super honored to be here with them.
Well, you know what? I feel the same way in that I look back at the last 50 to 54 guests that I've had on, and I said, how did I meet all of these amazing people?
Right,
I feel so fortunate to be surrounded by leaders in not only in our industries, but in our industry, but our communities as well.
right.
And you've done some great things that I can't wait for you to talk about and let everybody know. The whole purpose of the show is really just to bring about a little more inspiration and motivation for those out there. Anybody that's self-employed, entrepreneurs. There's the roller coaster and the up and down. But as martial artists, we have such amazing stories too with our students and our successes, our failures. And I hope that those of you watching today will take something away from this and help you make 2022 the best year yet. So, if you could just start, Ali, and just kind of introduce yourself briefly, tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, and we'll just have a great conversation today.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've been doing the martial arts since I'm 3 years old. Fortunately for me, my parents put me in it when I was a kid, so I had no idea. My dad was a cop. It was in the early '70s. I'm going to be 57 next month,
All
or
right.
in February. So yeah, and I've been blessed to have continued my whole life in the martial arts. I always did other things. I was totally into music and played in a rock band and toured and had recorded a few albums and things like that. But martial arts was always my steady. At any time I had any time off, I was at the martial arts studio, training in the martial arts, practicing martial arts. Watching martial art movies. Like you and I am positive that when our
Mm-hmm.
downtime involves something martial art related or
Yep.
motivation or something like that. So I've been doing it my whole life, and been fortunate to have some amazing teachers too.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about your childhood, just kind of growing up. You're from the East Coast. I
Yeah.
believe you're in Long Island. Is that where
Yep,
you're at?
Long Island. Yep, right in Suffolk County, and my town that I live in. My whole life is West Islip, so that's where I opened my school up. My first school 30 years ago, actually. This November was my past the 30-year anniversary, and I just closed that school on the 30-year anniversary and combined them with my other location that I have had
Hmm.
for 25 years. So, what a great run there, and I just wanted to kind of condense my life down a little.
Right. What was it like growing up in New York? What's it like?
I mean,
Being an East Coaster.
I guess, I'm everyone kind of thinks New York, Manhattan, the city.
Right.
But it's I'm on the in the suburbs on Long Island. So think of it more like a small version of the Hamptons, where people see, the open space and water and houses that are not on top of each other, that kind of thing.
Uh huh.
But yeah, it was great. I mean, I grew up in kind of a privileged community. I should, would say it's not really a wealthy community, but we had everything we ever wanted, and the city and the town was nice. And when I went to high school, though, I was a troubled kid, just like a lot of martial artists. My parents, my mom was a European woman from the island of Malta. My dad was a cop. And he believed everything that anyone said about me. If I was a bad kid, my mom fought for me tooth and nail, totally opposite. And even though I was a terrible kid, my mom was always on my side. So, I got in a lot of fights. I was in a troublemaker, a wise guy, that kind of thing. But my martial art teachers really kept me on a beaten path. I think I owe probably, 80% of my success to them.
Yeah, I think that that's a little bit of a commonality with other martial artists that I've talked to. As you're explaining all those things, I'm like, yeah, that sounds a little bit like me.
Yeah,
Troubled teen, didn't really know what I wanted to do, what my place was.
right.
So you get bored, you get in trouble, you do stupid things, and
Yeah.
and you look back and you go, what was I thinking?
Right. Oh yeah. I've done some really stupid things, but I think of it though. too, like if they had the label ADD back then when I was a kid, I most certainly would have had it.
Right.
Although I don't really believe too much in the labeling. There are certain kids that have extreme ADHD and ADD, and medicine is the choice and only
Hmm.
choice. But I think for the majority of kids, they're just misunderstood. I was able to focus on anything I enjoyed. I could play my guitar for 6 hours in a row. I could, do martial arts nonstop. I had no trouble focusing there. But when it came to things like school that bored the heck out of me,
Hmm.
typical subjects that I had no interest in, I was, looking out the window. I was flirting with girls, causing trouble, making jokes, and that kind of thing.
So funny. Hey, I want to give a shout out real quick. Kevin Kowalski out there in Colorado, he's watching, and he said he'll be in Long Island, so maybe he'll drop by,
Yeah,
give
Kevin,
you a little visit.
come and visit me anytime. I'm always at the school. I'm there 6 days a week still, or pretty much 5 to 6 days a week. So come and visit or just reach out to me.
Well, while we have him watching, Kevin, is there any question you have? Drop a question in there for Allie, and we'll definitely get to it in just a second here.
Yeah.
So, kind of grew up. It's funny you started explaining a lot of things, and like my wife family was in New York, New Jersey area, and like you started talking about things and I'm thinking about like the Jersey Shore,
Right. Right.
and the whole reality show. I don't know why that
Yeah.
popped in my head, but like I'm a West Coaster out here in California, and so
Right.
like
Right.
I immediately thought about that. um Tell me a little bit more about 3 years old starting martial arts. I mean, you don't remember life before martial arts. I mean, you
No,
can't have any memories of anything before that.
yeah.
But what was it like training as a as a youngster coming up?
Well, it's interesting. I actually start kids in my school at 2 years old, right? So that people
Wow.
think I'm insane. However, they're exceptional 2-year-olds that they're amazing. Like when I watch this class, by the way, it's one of my favorite classes to teach because they're
Uh-huh.
hysterical, right? But anyway, that class for me, the more you challenge a child to do something, the better they're going to be at anything that they do. And we could get into this in a second, but I think that's the problem with society today is that we're afraid to challenge our kids. But I'll go back to how I started. I don't really recall the intricacies of my martial arts at that age. Like I remember being there, I remember training, I remember if I got a beating that day. And when I say a beating, like my judo coach would throw me over and over and over and over again, and then my mom would go, oh, I talked to sensei and told him that you didn't listen at home, kind of thing. Like everything would click for me. But they didn't. My dad had to pull some strings as a cop to get me into the school because they wouldn't teach kids from anywhere like 9 years old and above. So my dad said, hey, listen, can you do me a favor? I'm a cop. He used that whole entire thing, and they let me in. And they said to him, I'm not going to treat him any differently. We'll treat a 9-year-old on up to an adult. And so they trained me real hard. I mean, I did everything that they did. Obviously, I wasn't fighting. We did judo, so we were grappling and throwing, and they were pretty tough on me. So I remember that part of it, and I remember the intense training, even at a young age with that school.
Hmm. Well, tell me, what did you start in judo? Was that your
Yeah, my
initial system of martial arts?
Yeah, officially at that school, it was Jerome Mackey. I don't know if you ever remember the name. Jerome Mackey was probably the first martial art franchise and that was out. I mean, TV commercials. It was like the Tiger Schulman with the type of
Mm.
promotion and branding back in the day. And yeah, they had locations everywhere throughout New York. I got enrolled in that school. But at the same time, simultaneously, my cousin was a black belt, second degree black belt in Mudo Kwan Tang Sudo and also Aikido. So he lived in it's basically almost the city in Rockaway Beach, and he would come out on weekends and stay with us, and he would teach me Aikido as well when I was a kid.
Mm.
He was a stuntman. He did some stuff with Sonny Chiba movies, and he was a background actor in a few of those things. So he was a big inspiration. Plus, he was also a musician, so that was where my music came in as well. Yeah, so I mean, I started in Jiromaki, which was judo and jujitsu with a little blend of karate, and then Aikido was my first experience in the martial arts.
All right, all right. You brought up, I don't hear it very often. You brought up Tong Sudo. Both
Yeah.
Kevin and I are Tong Sudo practitioners
Oh,
from
great.
early years. My instructor was taught by Chuck Norris, Pat Johnson.
Yeah.
Back in the 70s here in California, and you just don't hear a lot about other system styles. And
Yeah.
and what you do and what you teach now is fairly unique because I believe that you're also in ninjutsu
Yeah.
as well, right?
Well, yeah, that's my main thing. So quickly moving on, I trained in the first two arts, and then I continued heavily with my cousin in Aikido, and I eventually ended up getting a black belt with him. The school that I was with, they ended up closing down. I mean, they were doing very well. And what happened was they got some bad press. The owner, Jerome Mackey, who now is a billionaire, actually, he insures power plants. And
Hmm.
he's probably in his 80s. But so he got some bad press. He was mugged in the city at gunpoint, and he gave them their wallet. They said, "Give me your money." He gave him his wallet, and he walked away. But of course, he's a tough guy. He's supposed to chop and break, because some of his commercials were him beating up the bad guy in the street in a mugging situation. In this situation, he gave him his wallet. So he got some bad press, and then the schools ended up going out of business. But then I continued on with Aikido, and then I met my one teacher, Tuhan Chris Sayak of the Sayak Systems. He was a Filipino knife fighter, very famous. He did the movie The Hunted with Benicio del Torres, and he has famous students like Tommy Lee Jones. Even Ernie Reyes Jr. was a student of his as well. So I trained with him for many years and was fortunate to have him live with me for a year. He actually lived in my house for an entire year. He had no place to stay, or something had gone on, and he basically moved in, him and his wife, into my home with my mom and I. And it was like the Karate Kid all over again. Like, he'd wake me up at 2 a.m, make me go in the backyard, climb trees, shoot arrows at me. It was like what you would envision an old 70s karate, 80s karate movie to be. That was what my upbringing was when I was in like junior high and high school. It was pretty awesome.
How fun is that? I mean, that's just so cool. Hey, you brought up Ernie Reyes Jr., and I want to make sure that anybody watching, any of our martial arts friends out there, say a prayer for Ernie, because I've seen a lot of mention of
Yes.
his health and how he's doing. So please say a prayer for Ernie Reyes Jr. and his family.
Yeah, and I also shared, if you want to go to my Facebook page, I shared a fundraiser, which they're doing a crowd fundraiser for Ernie's medical bills. So
Hmm.
I shared that with all my friends and family, and hopefully people will jump in and help him out, because I know the expenses are just astronomical, right? Like, can you
Yeah.
imagine in our
No.
world we live in, where you'd be bankrupted on just trying to stay alive, right, or stay
Right.
healthy? It's
Right.
disgusting.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Well,
Yeah.
hey, I'm going to throw this question up here, and it's kind of out of order, but make sure we get to it. Kevin wanted to know, what's your New Year's advice for business owners going into 2022?
Well, I think that 2022 will be pretty challenging, because I still think the media and the government is kind of throwing this whole entire COVID variable in. So we're all afraid, shutdowns, quarantines, et cetera, et cetera. So what are we going to do? What's it going to be like? Like, for example, we have a tournament circuit, and we're having trouble just getting venues. Like, none of the venues will even rent to us. And
Hmm.
we have one or two that may. They're still up in the air. They're waiting for the mandates to come out in New York State. So with that being said, though, I think that anytime we go into a new year, whatever year it may be, but this year, 2022, I think the most important thing for school owners now is to look at three things, and business is, pretty simple. Customer service, right? I think that we tend to focus a little bit on the top end to new students, right? And we have to do that to bring our new clients in. But I think that customer service is our best, marketing tool, retention and customer service. So I suggest this year to really develop an over the top customer service program, meaning, like, really know what your clients need, what they want, and what they have to do in order to continually, grow and succeed and become better at what they do. If you could reach that and be the best at that, you're going to have a studio that's going to last forever, and it's going to keep on growing organically, because they say that, people who are happy refer you, but I don't believe that to be true. I think they have to be over the moon happy. Like, they have to be so happy that they're not going to, if they're kind of just happy, they'll maybe tell your name if someone asks. But if they're over the moon happy, they're like bragging about you and talking about you. It's like if you go to a restaurant and the service was okay, you're not going to go tell everybody. But if it was outstanding, where you were just so happy, you're going to then brag about it and talk about it. So I think that's the most important thing. Everyone should really focus on customer service. I think a lot of schools, they get them in the door and then they plug them into a system, and then they just let them run, in the system. But I think to really stay on top of that is amazing. And I found it for me too. I've just focused on that for the last 2 years with COVID and everything like that. And my enrollment is grown. My student body is happy. People are so good. They love what we do. They're telling the world about us.
Is there something specific, maybe just one tip, anything that really stands out for you when you talk about customer service? Because I couldn't agree more, right? Yes, it's always important to bring in new members. I mean, that is
Right.
definitely the lifeblood of our school. But at
Right.
the same time, great customer service, over the top customer service that's going
Yeah.
to get people to be raving fans that refer new students. Actually, that customer
Yeah.
service and retention helps the marketing. So is there something specific that you've changed, done recently, that's really boosted your
Well,
customer
I
service?
think the personal relationships, that's really with each individual person, right? So, I mean, I think that as schools grow, and I've had schools, 600 members, 400 members, per location. At that point, sometimes you forget who people are. There were kids that I didn't know their names. There were parents that I had never met before, that kind of thing. I literally know every single student's name. I know every single parent by name. I know what their goals are, and I remember their goals long after they've forgotten them, so that I'm able to continually keep working with them and upping the ante, so to speak. Like, okay, well, how's Johnny doing? He's confident now. You came in, he wasn't confident. Now he's really confident, but what do you want to do now? And then
Hmm.
reset goals and reestablish that. So I think that it's personal communication, continual contact, really talking to people on a regular basis. I
Hmm.
warn people when they join my school, and I say, listen, you're probably going to get mad at me because I'm an over communicator. I'm
Hmm.
constantly texting, constantly emailing, constantly reaching out to the people. And I do it all. I use a software called Spark. I'm giving them a
Hmm.
little plug, but they're, in my opinion, amazing. But it gave me the ability to just pop in a text and send it off, like just like that. And I just today I sent out like 25 texts just to tell people, hope you had a good holiday. Like that kind of little stuff that keeps you connected in their
Right,
lives.
right,
Right.
right. Yeah, cool. Well, thank you for sharing that tip. And if you
Yeah.
don't mind, I'll just share one with Kevin as well, or for anybody. And honestly, I think, like you said, any of this customer service, anything that we're trying to go over the top, it doesn't have to relate just to our martial arts schools.
Right.
Any business owner out there, the personal connection, and personal connection doesn't always mean that we have to be friends.
Right.
We're not doing all the we're not going out drinking with the
Dinner.
students. We're
Right.
not going
Yeah.
out and having them over to our homes, but the personal connection is important. I feel that that's something that's really helped our school. But I actually just happen to have this, and you probably can't see it real well, but this is something that this week my instructors will be doing. And each student in our school, instead of having our regular classes, we're not shut down this week.
Uh-huh.
We just have private lessons for
Okay.
every student that signs up, and they're free. It's a 30-minute private lesson with every student in the school that signs up. And
Wow.
then at the end of the private lesson, they have a parent teacher conference, and they talk about their strengths, weaknesses, any concerns. Do they have any referrals? Do any family members want to get involved? Are they
Right.
interested in taking their training to the next level? Those kind of things. And maybe are they interested in doing a follow up lesson? But I
Yeah.
think that taking a few minutes just to ask some of those questions, and we literally, they fill out this card, and then at our next staff meeting, we're going to discuss each and every student that did those lessons. I think that that's a
That's
great way
awesome.
to get in touch with
Definitely, I
each
love it,
person.
and it reminds me of when we look at our students and we notice their attendance is dropping, that's when we get worried, right? When they're coming
Yep.
every day, we're like, wow, they're awesome, no
Hmm.
no worry. The minute their attendance starts to drop, we know that they're possibly on their way out, or there's some sort of lull and they're not as excited anymore. So we
Right.
have to understand, like, that's why we have to try to keep them at peak performance the entire way. There are going to be some ups and downs, but the minute they phase out and fall out, they're going to end up quitting, right? So if we
Hmm.
get the more personal contact we have, the better. And I'll tell you, as far as customer service, I took some of my gift cards that I got and I went to Guitar Center because you can see I've got guitars all over, and
Uh-huh.
it's like my addiction, and recording music and all that stuff. So the first guy I dealt with during the day, he was rushed. He didn't have time for me. I had to look around for a salesperson. It was like kind of annoying. I bought stuff. He didn't explain it. I took it all home and it really didn't work the way I wanted it to. So my wife was like, just bring it back tomorrow. But she ended up going out, and I'm like, you know what? I'm bringing it all back right now. Like I was pissed off. And
Yep.
I went in, and a new guy was there, and this dude was like on top of everything. What he asked me what I needed, what I was doing, what software I had. He told me what would work, what didn't. He was very knowledgeable in his field. He kind of helped me through the whole I don't buy that. You could just use this, and ended up getting everything that I ever wanted. And it was like half the price. And I
Hmm.
felt like I knew what I was doing because I got a little education from him. That was customer service. And they were lucky to have this guy, but the other guy was just terrible at what he did. And so that's what we should should look at when we're building our schools, our staff, our, our instructors, as far as if we have program managers, they all have to be on the same page, and they have to be totally with the program. Like, I mean, really
Hmm.
believe in what you do and not let anything else get in the way.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Hey, tell me about opening your first school.
Well, yeah, thanks. That's a good question. So, um, I was training with a teacher. His name is Xian Felix Vasquez, a very famous ninjutsu, American ninjutsu guy, trained under Professor Ronald Duncan. So if you're on the East Coast, they're world famous. If you don't know the names, they're amazing, but they're very hardcore. So I trained with him, and I wanted a place that I could train when I couldn't make it into the city. So I said, hey, I should open up a small little school. In my head, I'm thinking like I could get students so I could, practice my moves on them. We could fight. I could beat them up a little. They could resist, and, I could practice my stuff. So I opened my first school. It was like literally a 700 square foot facility. I mean, from front to back, bathroom, office, and floor. It was so tiny that if I did a kata and we punched twice, we hit the wall, we'd have to back step by a good whole full step so we could get the third punch in. That's how tiny it was. And slowly I grew out of it. And, by the year one, I'm like, hey, I got to go to, and I had no goal whatsoever to run a school. Like at the time, it was just to have training partners and people to work out with. I didn't want to make it into a business. I just wanted to do it. I owned a rather thriving landscape construction company. And at the time I was making tons and tons of money on that. But I just got that love. I always loved teaching from my teacher and all the teachers I trained with. And I opened this school, and then soon I was like, wow, this is pretty cool, but we're running out of space. So my wife at the time and I decided to jump in the car and go look for some other buildings. And no joke, I literally turned the first corner, and there was a little Japanese man, it couldn't have been any better, hanging a for rent sign on this big commercial building.
Hmm.
And I pulled right over. Within a day, I was renting that facility, and it was history. I bought the building from him, owned it for 30 years, and but that's how I started off in this small little 600 or so square foot facility, and then I ended up in like a 7,000, 8,000 square foot warehouse space, like kind of
Wow.
commercial building. Yeah,
Wow.
and yeah, school blossomed. It was, and then I ended up about a year and a half later, not even. I sold my landscape business, made a good amount of money on that, and just taught martial arts full time.
Good for you. Wow. And then when did the second school come along?
There was a few. I mean, probably about 3 years after I expanded in the new location, I had a student that I wanted, he was my top guy. I wanted to share with him, and open up a second location for the both of
Hmm.
us. That school didn't work out, the partnership between him and I. However, that school is still in existence. It's 27 years later. He's still there. I just think I wanted it more for him than he wanted it for himself at the time. And we had a bad falling out. There was some, bad blood. But anyway, since then, we've come back together. He apologized. Actually, I was at a Maya event once, and he was in the audience, and he said, "Can I say something?" And I'm like, "This could either go really bad or really good, right?"
Right.
So but he said, "Hey, without you, I want everyone to know I wouldn't have been able to do what I do, and I'm thankful." Like he kind of made amends that day. And anyway, long that was in front of like 400 people. Anyway, long story short, he's still there. That was my second school, and then I started opening schools about 4 years later, where I was popping them out, and had different locations. And I've had schools. We had up to 6 in Long Island. I had 4 out of the country, one in Bermuda, which is still kind of going right now. Costa Rica. We had a small little group in Thailand. I had one in Michigan, one upstate New York. So we were all over, people teaching what I call 21st century ninjutsu.
Now, were these all schools under your ownership, or were they
Yeah.
franchised, or
No, actually, everyone in Long Island was under my ownership, just mine. And I had, hired and set staff in place.
right?
The schools outside the country were partnerships, so that there was myself and them together.
Got it. And what prompted you? What made you want to open multiple locations? Because that's always the question in
Yeah.
our industry is, and really in any industry, of expanding and having the extra locations. What made you want to do that, or was it
I was
gotta
I
happen?
was I was really entrepreneurial. Like I wanted to be like, Donald Trump with less the bad hair, all the real estate everywhere right now. To say his name sometimes now, it's a lot different than it was 15 years ago, right?
Right.
But but yeah, I really just wanted to continually keep teaching my art to the masses. Like I really wanted to share ninjutsu and help the world. Of course, along the way, I'd love to have made more money and, had, better lifestyle and all that other stuff. However, even a friend of mine just opened his second location, and I kind of warned him about it. I said, until you're perfectly ready, I would be careful about just opening another location, because I always found that that next location was a drain, and the main headquarters had to pay for the second location until it got up. And it was, stress on staffing. And it was just a lot of work for me. Like people thought that I didn't teach that much, because maybe in one location they'd see me like once a week. They thought
Hmm.
the rest of the days I was sitting at home. Meanwhile, I was at the other location and then the other location. So I was working 7 days a week, traveling the world, teaching seminars, and I really had no time to myself. And then it all changed when my daughter was born. And that was it. Like the meaning of life kind of came into view for me, and my whole entire
Hmm.
life changed. I said, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be away.
Hmm.
I actually cut back tremendously in the schools that I had locally, and a lot of my students were angry with me because they didn't see me anymore, and they didn't realize they never felt how I felt. They never said, hey, he has to spend time with his brand new baby girl, that kind of thing. It was like, oh, we want more, more, more. Why can't you give it to us? And so it was a struggle for me, but I learned a lot. And then I just decided to cut back.
Sure, sure. And you talked about just recently where you had the two schools and you just made the decision that you were going to combine the schools. I've been in that
Yeah.
position myself. What was your deciding factor on that? Was it similar to what had happened before?
Yeah, well, that's a long time ago. Nowadays, I'm older, right? So I think as we get older, and I'm 50, it's going to be 57. I think that we start thinking about life differently, and it
Hmm.
really is about time of life, quality of life, enjoying your life, right? Because
Hmm.
unfortunately, my poor dad, he was a retired cop. He passed away about 10 years ago, and he was broke his whole life. Like he didn't know how to manage money. When he retired, he started his own business. He was always losing money. I was always bailing him out. Thank God I could do that. And he didn't have any business sense. He always wished he'd have money to travel or to buy the car he wanted or to have the summer home, and never had any of that, right? So I realized probably starting about like 10 years ago, that I really wanted quality of life over quantity of life, right? A lot of times people are working so hard to have that next nice car, and I've done all that, and houses and buildings, and but then I said, am I enjoying life? Like what is it that really virtually just makes me happy? And it was never the things that I could buy. It wasn't never the things that I could have. It was always just a quality of life, maybe with my daughter or my wife, or that vacation where I was able to just relax and spend time, that kind of thing. And
Hmm.
at that point, I said, I don't want to do this my whole life. I don't want to be, I don't want to have to divide myself in two schools. Now is the time, when COVID hit, that people would understand. And I brought all the students from one location and we combined them in the other. I owned that building as well for 25 years. And I was able to sell my other building off, and just really focus on the students and spending time with them. And then I could be there. Everyone saw me, everyone, that kind of thing. And I was a part of
Hmm.
their lives rather than just a little part of their lives, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
Well, it's great to hear someone talk about quality of life, and because it's real easy and again in any industry, in any business, it's real easy to get kind of caught up watching the people to your left and right, and watching the
Yeah.
people that are above you, and you're constantly chasing
Yeah.
and not truly enjoying all that's going on, because you're just so stuck in that, what's next, what's next, what's
Oh,
next.
yeah.
So and I agree, it does come with age, because what we thought at 20, 30, and 40 is different than what we're going to think,
Yeah, and you know what? If 20-year-olds are listening and they're in the game now and they're doing the schools, they're probably not gonna even hear what we say in regards to this, because
right,
it's just not their time, right?
right.
So you have to go through those things in order to actually experience the stuff now, right?
Hmm.
To be able to sit back and just enjoy. And like I said, and by the way, COVID was a big eye opener. I don't know if you had this, but I had students that hadn't trained with me in 20 years who were getting in touch with me during the quarantine, and all of a sudden they wanted to come back to training. I have a lot of people that came back to train
Hmm.
that never trained, that hadn't been there in 15 years because they realized that was the happiest they'd ever been. And then they got caught in life, doing their
Right.
job, doing the work, paying the bills, raising a family. And they forgot that they enjoyed these little things. And it's
Hmm.
always the little things. And I think that's the biggest mistake that most martial arts school owners make. They're constantly in the thick of things. They're in that hamster wheel, spinning the wheel all day long. They go home, they fall asleep, and they repeat the process the next day, or
Right.
for that whole week. And then they look back at, like I did this year. I don't like, where did this year go? Like 2021. It's crazy at how quick it went.
Yeah, it blew right by. It's funny you talk about students returning. I've been in the business. 91 is when I started teaching professionally and opened my school in 96. And I see a lot of people coming back,
Yeah,
and just over the years. But with the strangest, well, I don't want to say strange, but it just opened my eyes a bit when I had students coming back to me with their kids.
right.
That they're having their child is 3, 4,
Yeah,
5 years old now, and they're like,
yeah,
well, I remember how much I loved martial arts myself.
right.
I want my child to experience that. And I think that
Absolutely.
man, that has been such a cool feeling to hear how much. And I had, with Christmas just a few days ago, um, students that I hadn't heard from in a bit. Like,
Right.
I haven't heard from them all year, but hey, Merry Christmas. Thank you
That's
so much
great.
for everything you've done. And that's just such a great feeling to know that you've had that kind of impact. So,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And building relationships is the key, right? And it's interesting, like back in the 90s when I was there every day for every single class, exercise with every class all day long, all week long. Then I kind of took a pull back and had teachers doing it for me, and I'd show up, the head instructor. I remember just the measurement on ornaments on my Christmas tree, right? I would get all these, "You're the best sensei," and I look at my tree, when I set it up, I'm like, this was the era when I was really connected with my students because they were buying me Christmas ornaments, right? And then it was a big span where I didn't get any. Well, this year I started getting them again. I'm going like, I must be doing a good job because I'm reconnecting, because people are feeling like they think of me during the holidays. Like, I'm not just providing a service for them. They're like, wow, let's buy Sensei something nice for his tree so he can remember us by, so
Yeah.
that's the connecting I was talking about with customer service as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Tell me about, getting into, consulting, speaking, on that side of things, because
Yeah.
going from teaching martial arts and being a martial arts school owner to now sharing with all other business owners.
Yeah.
How did you get involved in that? How did that start for you?
Well, I actually was involved with a billing company called APS back in the day, and
Hmm.
then they merged with PPS, right? And there's two companies. Then they became Member Solutions, and I was one of the
Hmm.
big billers back in the day. So like people were like, "Wow, he's really successful," and let's have him speak at our show, and we're
Hmm.
doing a little seminar. Would you come in as a guest? And I started doing a lot of that, and I felt like I really enjoyed it. And then they were really good to me. They hired me full time. I was a consultant for the billing company, and they would put me in front of anybody and everybody. So, like for example, due to them, I'm positive that I got on the cover of Maya magazine, the board breaker newsletters and all these different things. So they were pushing me out there so that their clients would see me doing things, and then I could help them with their clients as well. And then I started personal coaching as well, because once I started doing it, I got a real love for it, helping
Hmm.
school owners. And there was one epiphany that I had. Like, I wanted to always have everyone in the world, including you, training in my art, ninjutsu, right? And I know that would never happen because you love what you do and you're not going to throw that away. But that was my goal. But then I realized that that wasn't going to happen. So I had to say, how am I going to help the industry? How am I going to help people in general? If I could make them better business owners, these school owners, or teach them little tricks of the trade to make them succeed more, they can help more people. And in turn, I kind of got my goal as well by helping more people through the martial arts. So
Hmm.
that's what that became for me. And yeah, I had an online program. I had, you know, uh, regular coaching. I was doing up to like 26 coaching calls per week. It was brutal though.
Hmm.
I'm sure you know this, you've done it, right? And
Yes,
sometimes you
sir.
get people that are like literal like energy vampires. Like, you get 1 hour and you're done, like, for the day. And then you had to go on to number two, three, four, five, and six. So it was a lot of work, but I enjoyed it. And I just, again, on that as well, I kind of cut back. I only have a select group of clients, maybe like five, that I coach personally. And I help people whenever they need help. I do the two podcasts and share that way. And yeah, that's really what I do now, but more on my own choice versus any kind of financial goal or anything like that.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and that's exactly what this podcast became was, I had done the coaching and consulting for a bit, and it was great, and I got to meet a lot of really awesome people and work with some great clients,
Yeah.
and learned so much.
Yeah.
And then it became more about just what can I do to make a difference? What can I do to
Right.
help? What can I do just to provide another outlet for people to
Right.
be involved in? And this makes me $0. There's
Yeah.
no advertisers for this podcast, and
Right.
uh, it's just a passion project. So I think that's
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 awesome.
awesome. I love that. I love to hear that other people are doing the same, and we're all
Yeah.
kind of, it's cliche, right? We're all in it together, and we're all trying to help each other grow. But
Absolutely.
I believe it. I think it's
Yeah.
great.
We actually, Dwayne Brummett and I do a podcast called School Owner Talk, and we just
Hmm.
celebrated our 302nd podcast. So that's
That's
a
amazing.
long time, right? Like we've been doing it, and we're still doing it. Like we enjoy it. Him and I, it's kind of like our own kind of counseling. We'll get on, we'll talk about issues, we'll work things through, and off scene, off camera, we'll talk to each other on a weekly basis. And then I just started something else with Gus Lopez. He's a young guy, and he's a marketing guru. So him and I are doing one as well. And yeah, I just have fun sharing. Sometimes maybe I talk too much, or people can't shut me up. But I'm like, hey, listen, I just want to share.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. I think that's great. I think it's a true spirit of a martial artist.
Yeah,
That's what we do. We love what we do. We know what it can do for other people, so we want to share it. And
yeah,
and that's where, going from a martial arts student to a martial arts instructor to a martial arts school owner that now provides an opportunity to help other people become leaders, and so on and so forth. The cycle continues from there. How did you start your first podcast? I mean, 300 episodes. I mean, we're
yeah.
talking, that's, if
Well,
you're doing it every week, that's
it's
five,
great.
six
Yeah,
years.
exactly. We are pretty much, there are some that like during the holidays, we might miss a few weeks here and there.
Hmm.
But Dwayne Brummett approached me and said, hey, I'm thinking of doing a podcast. Would you be interested? And I was like, absolutely. And then we've been doing it ever since. So it was just something he wanted to do. I thought it would be cool to get involved with, and I enjoyed it, and we just keep on going, and we share freely. Like we have, like I said, 302 podcasts on every single topic of martial arts school owner. And you could listen on iTunes. You could go to Spotify. You could look it up on our website. I think it's schoolownertalk.com. And you could put in a category like retention, referrals, whatever. And it'll pull up 6 or 7 different podcasts that we chatted about those different topics. So school owners, like I was at the Super Show, and I think, or it was one of the conventions. And a lady was with her daughter. She's a school owner, and she starts talking to me. And as she's talking to me, her little kid, like probably 7, looks up and goes, Mommy, I know his voice. He's the guy we listen to in the car all the time, like that kind of thing. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty wild that I was recognized through my voice, which is pretty distinctive anyway. But at the same time, that they're listening, and people clean their school to us, and sit down and brainstorm with their staff to our podcast. So it's pretty cool. And again, just like you, it's a passion project. We have a few sponsors, but they kind of help pay for the software, and that's it. And we do
Hmm.
it because we love it.
That's awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
Uh, Tell me about what's kind of new, and what's in the future for you.
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard one. I mean, I'm at the stage in my life where, I'm kind of planning a little bit of my exit strategy. Is that it's that Long Island accent. Now, I hope that I don't have that. That's what Kevin just typed in there. But I try very hard not to have that Long Island. If you heard my wife talk, I'm always saying something to her like, it's not like butter, it's butter, that kind of thing.
Water,
Yes,
water.
yeah, it's water, not water, that kind of thing. But anyway, what was I just saying? I got distracted. I
Well, we're
apologize.
just talking about what's new,
Oh yeah, yeah.
what's coming up for you.
Yeah, so I was going to say that, I think I'm more on the exit strategy side, where I'm kind of looking at, my school. I already have a successor. He's going to take over the school. Whether I leave it to him, my daughter, she's 22. She's a black belt as well, but she has no interest. She's in the fashion industry. She, went to FIT and Oneonta for fashion. So she's not really interested in taking over the school. So I have a student who's been running it with me for 17 years. He started off as a teenager. He's now in his mid 30s, and he'll be the one that takes over the school. My ultimate goal would be to teach 1 or 2 days a week, be able to still reap the rewards financially, but also, be like kind of a half partner or quarter partner and him run the school, and then me just enjoy life in general, go and
Hmm.
travel with my wife, get a motor home, go a few places a few weeks out of the year, a different place or a country, and live the lifestyle and just kind of chill out and relax. But as far as business goes, I think I really enjoy teaching, and I love being out there. So I don't think I'd ever stop, unless, I couldn't do it physically anymore. So I would enjoy being a part of my school forever. But I don't know if I'd be a part of the ownership and the business side and the running of the state, and that kind of thing. I'd probably consult with the guy who takes over for me. But my ultimate goal is to just, kind of chill more, spend more time on the spiritual stuff in life, for me as well. And, work on me, growing, and the things I enjoy to do more of them, and so on.
Hmm. You know, having done martial arts since you were 3 years old, and you've been in the business for a lot of years, and you talked a lot about, working 5, 6, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
What advice do you have to, again, any business owner, anybody, to avoid, burnout, avoid that? I put a post up today because a friend of mine posted, and I kind of changed the words a little bit, and I've seen it kind of come around before about, owning a business is hard. It can be
Hmm.
hard. Being self-employed, being an entrepreneur it can be challenging. If you don't have the right systems and you don't have the right people in place, it only makes it harder. But a lot of people face burnout of teaching, training, whatever. How have you avoided that?
I didn't necessarily avoid it. That would be a lie if I told you I did, right? So there was a good period of time, probably like a good 5 or 6 years ago, that I'm saying this on the air, and just being open with everybody, that every morning I'd wake up and I'm thinking to myself, like, how can I get out? What would be the best way? Should I sell? Should I let it go? I wanted an exit of some sort because I was so burnt out on it. And let me tell you what burnt me out. It wasn't the teaching. It wasn't working hard, because I could do that all day long. In fact, I wake up at 7 in the morning and I work on my computer and office work at home until like 2:30, take a quick nap, 15 minutes, and I'm off to the dojo, right? And I run my school during the day from my home office, and I run my dojo physically at night. I have no problem with that at all. It was the stuff that really wore me down, was the parents that were always complaining,
Hmm.
issues with clients when they thought that I was a commodity versus an instructor, meaning like they paid me tuition and they thought they owned me. And that point I got to in my life where I had a lot of negativity, because negativity breeds negativity, right?
Hmm.
And I was really getting to the point where even my main instructor, we'd come into the school and we just saw certain people and we hated being there when they were there. And I had a good group of people that were just negative. They came together because negativity breeds negativity, right? And they all sat
Hmm.
around and complained and talked and had so much to say, and just made my life miserable, right? So at a certain point, I said to myself, you know what? I'm gonna kick them all out and get rid of them. And that was a tough thing to do, because as a business owner, sometimes you're like, wow, there's 10 of them. They pay X amount of dollars. That pays my mortgage. Or, I don't want to lose them and get bad blood and be looked at like some sort of tyrant. But anyway, once I made the decision to slowly get rid of this group, and I would say it's like 15 or 20 of them that were they were just a nightmare. And they'd go from one school to the next, and, oh, look, there's dust on the shelf. Or look, I can't believe, they'd say negative things to people that were positive, and they'd poison them, and they were toxic, right? So I got rid of them, and it took a while to get it all cleared out. And just recently, I had one parent just recently was nasty to me, right? So I'm in the lobby just on 2 days before Christmas, and she says to me, "Did you get that sparring gear, that last piece of gear?" I'm like, "Yeah, Mrs. Smith, I have a whole bunch of it in. What's this part that you need?" "I don't know what I need. You should know that," like in front of everybody. I'm like, "Ma'am, I don't
Hmm.
really know." She's like, "Well, yeah, well, you're going to waste my time." And she just really went off on me, right? And I turned to her, I said, "You know what? I'm just a human being and I make mistakes just like you." I said, "I really apologize." Anyway, long story short, she left. Everyone was like, "Oh my God, what happened to her?" And I'm like, "Hey, listen, I haven't been reamed out like that in 5 years," that kind of thing. Anyway, she immediately texted me and said, "I'm sorry. I was in a bad mood." And I knew something was wrong, because she's usually a sweet person. But I was not used to being treated like that back 5 years ago. That was kind of like a daily thing, because I had these toxic people around me. So so for 5 years I hadn't had that. It's just been blissful. Like I come in and everyone is loving and caring and friendly, and we have a great relationship, and it's positive, positive, positive. You have to breed that in your school. You really do. You have to make sure that you work on that and make sure you build a culture of positivity, because the
Hmm.
world we live in is a very negative place. No matter what you say, I don't care what political thing you have, people are just negative because they're bred to be that way. That's the way the media trains you, the way school systems train you. It's just the way society is. Negativity is really an important thing to most people. They want to be in the drama somehow. And I don't want to have anything to do with it. If it's someone like a friend, he's talking crap on Facebook too much, I'll just snooze him. I don't want to read it. I don't even want to see it, because even if it's the second I read it and it goes in my mind, now I'm feeling a little uneasy. So I want to rid myself and kind of purge myself from toxicity, right? And try to get rid of all of that. So anyway, now I just absolutely love what I do. Like I go in and it's just blissful, right? So that's what you want to build for your school. It should not feel negative in any way. And if you have Mrs. Jones, who's a complainer, and that's all she does, get rid of him, because she's not only ruining it for you, she's making other people feel bad and also ruining it for them as well. So if that's the case, be more aware of firing people that don't match your personality and your culture.
I think I remember the first time that that I heard it said that way, that it's okay to fire a client.
Yeah,
It's okay to let them go.
right,
Not everybody is going to be for your school. You could be for everybody, but not
right.
everybody is meant to be a part of your school. And you
Absolutely.
brought up the word culture. I think that that's so important. It's something that I believe my wife and I really focus on, no matter what business we're working on, or what we're doing. And you said it right. Negativity breeds more negativity, but on the
Yeah,
other end, positivity breeds more
yeah,
positivity. I can definitely say since COVID, whenever we consider it started or whatever, but
right.
kind of in the thick of it, I have noticed a shift in the culture of our school in a very positive way,
Oh,
because there
yeah,
were there were a lot of people that were, people wanted to blame us for this or blame us
yeah,
for that, or tell we're not doing the right thing, and
right.
it's like, you know what, we just may not be for you. It's okay to
Yeah, yeah,
go. It's okay to leave. And uh, and, and there's really no hard feelings necessarily. It's just, this is not the right team for you. There's
yeah,
another team out there, but this is not the team for you. And we lost, or we let go of quite a few people. But man, I can't tell you how much better it feels
yeah,
since they've left and since they're gone, because now we're surrounded by people that fit
yeah,
that culture. They are in the mission with us. You said earlier about
right.
having your team, your instructor team, totally 100% bought in. I mean, every instructor I have
Yeah,
has been with me since they were 3 4 years old,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And it's like, this is all they know, and they breed that culture within the school,
right.
and it gets better and better, and the students feel it, they see it, they enjoy it. It's just, it makes it a much more positive experience for everybody involved, because once you have poison, man, that poison can spread quick.
Yeah, and it's interesting, just like negativity breeds negativity, positivity kind of eliminates negativity, because negative people don't like being around positive people.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
so funny story. I mean, I know we've been running out of time, but um I remember one time a parent said to me, they said, I compare you to Tony Robbins. And I kind of had a little smile on my face. And then they said, and Hitler. And I'm like, did you say Hitler? And they're like, yeah, Tony Robbins and Hitler. And I'm like, how do you put Tony Robbins and Hitler in the same? And the guy's like, well, because Hitler and Tony Robbins brainwash people, so, and you're the type of person that's my kids, I don't want them to think the world is perfect and they should always be positive and that. And I'm like, I'm not telling them to look through things with rose colored glasses. I'm just showing them there's a positive outlook in life. And that person ended up quitting and taking her two children, or his two children, out of my school, because he just couldn't mix with the positive vibe. Like he wanted to be that negative person. So the more your culture is positive, the less likely people who are negative will feel comfortable. So once you get that culture really locked in, you'll be able to breed way more of it, because negative people won't like what you do.
For sure.
It's pretty interesting, right?
It is. And when you really sit back and watch, and you kind of read people, and see how they react in other situations, that's what
Right.
I start looking at. I'm looking at the person that's complaining in my school, but they're also complaining on Facebook. They're also
Mhm.
complaining everywhere they go. That's
Yeah.
just that's just part of their makeup, unfortunately. And I just, like you said, I just choose not to engage in that and not be a part of that
Right.
because there's too much more on the other side for us to
Right.
focus on. I mean, I think we all sit there and we can get those negative thoughts popping in our head,
Of
and
course.
the longer you sit there, and
Yeah.
and 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 it breeds more. So yeah,
Yeah.
but it can work the other way.
Life is way too short, for that kind of crap. I don't know if you ever remember seeing a movie with Eddie Murphy. I talk about it all the time, and I think it was called Holy Man.
Okay.
And he's just a guy wandering the city, and he's a holy man, right? And some guy sees him and picks him up. It was Jeff Goldblum, and he talks to him, and he's like, wow, he's such a positive, uplifting person. And Jeff Goldblum, his part, he does like QVC, a company like that. So they bring Eddie Murphy in to sell a lawnmower, right?
Hmm.
So Eddie Murphy now is on the set, and he's like, about to start, and he's like, come with me. And they never walk off set, but he's like, come with me. And he grabs the people in the set, and they walk off. Everyone's freaking out. Now he's outside, and he sits on his knees, and he touches the grass. They're selling a lawnmower now, remember? And he's touching the grass with his hands, and he goes, do you know, like, if you're 50 years old, you probably only have 40 more seasons, if you're lucky, to be able to touch this grass, or 30 more Christmases, or only 30 more birthdays, depending on how old you're going to live. And then the lawnmower sales are like shooting through because everyone now is buying lawnmowers because they want to experience that kind of
Hmm.
thing. But when we look at life in terms of what we have left, I mean, is it worth it to sit there and dwell on the negativity and the people that are, out there, or even the posts and the media and all that crap? I can't stand now even watching TV shows because somehow they infuse them with all the day-to-day baloney, woke propaganda or whatever the case may be. And I am forced to watch it, even if I ignore it in real life. It's in the shows now too. So I choose myself to just be as harmonious with, positivity and nature and life as I possibly can.
Well, and it's just a great feeling to have, number one, and number two, you notice that you attract people the same way
Right.
around you,
Right.
which makes you feel even better. So yeah, that
Absolutely.
that cycle continues on. I'm a big Eddie Murphy fan, and I've never seen that movie, so
Oh
I'm gonna
yeah,
have to
check it
add
out.
that
Yeah,
add that to my
Holy
list.
Man.
Now you're a big movie buff too,
Yep.
right?
Love it.
So what what have you been watching lately? Like, what's your or
Well,
TV
I have
stuff? What are you enjoying?
Yeah, first of all, TV and movies and music are my only escapes,
Uh
so
huh.
that's where I could that's why I get mad when they infuse day-to-day crap in it, because I want to escape that stuff, right?
Right.
So like
Totally.
when we kind of came out of COVID, every show was COVID, 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 warning signs. And I'm like, dude, shut it off. And my wife and I were like, we're not watching this stuff. We want to get away from this kind of
Right.
mindset. But
Right.
anyway, I mean, I just watched Joe Bell
Yep. Yep.
with Mark
Mark Wahlberg.
Wahlberg, who is phenomenal. He's just such an amazing actor, right? And I love,
Hmm.
like, I'm the kind of guy I could rate TV shows based on how many tissues you got to clean your eyes with when you're
Right. Right.
crying,
Right.
or, right? That kind of thing. And so that was phenomenal. And then I watched Protege, which was an action film, like a
Yep.
action bodyguarding film, which I love. The girl who is in Designated Survivor, I
Hmm.
believe she's Chinese or Korean, but she's a great actress and a martial art. She did great fight scenes. So
Hmm.
like that. And then my favorite show on TV is Yellowstone. Oh my
Yes.
god, I'm so sad. I watched second episode before. Next week is the finale. I'm like,
Right.
how can you wrap it up in one episode? I want like another 22 episodes. Like, it's that such a great show.
I love it.
Oh my god, I love everything about it. It's like the samurai, the bat. Like, there's no martial arts other than that, but like there's so many samurai elements of battle and strategy and the art of war and Sun Tzu and in there. That's incredible. And then I started 1883, which is the origin story of that,
Right.
and that's really good too.
Well, my wife is watching now, and we're watching Yellowstone. Love it. I got to check out 1883.
Yeah.
I it's so funny because I always say we need more Beths in this world.
Oh yeah.
Could you imagine? Could you
Right.
only imagine?
Yeah.
They
Well,
just say it like it is.
I just saw a great meme that said 2024 Beth for president and Rip for VP.
Love
So
it.
like it's incredible. Like yeah, but last, I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but last night's episode was kind of damaging when it came to Beth's personality. So that really bothered me a little, with her and her dad and some
Hmm.
clashes. But
Hmm.
isn't it interesting? He's like a very martial art kind of mentality, and he has morality, but he fights through it all, and he has to do whatever he feels is necessary to accomplish the task at hand. So I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, I love television, I love movies, I love reality shows too. And you mentioned Jersey Shore. I've never watched it when I was younger.
No, you
But never watched it, but now I watch Jersey Shore Vacation and Double Shot of Love, and I just love those guys. They're amazing.
talk about escaping from reality.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, it's
exactly.
funny. So I brought this up because I have noticed that, and I watch you actually post reviews on stuff that
Yeah.
you watch, and you talk about Last Samurai is one of my favorite movies
Oh
ever,
my
and
God,
and,
love
and
it.
I definitely get that. But I've got a list. People keep lists of like how many books they've read, and I've seen this year alone. I think we've seen 114 new movies.
That's
I just
great.
keep track. I mean, and that's my escape because it's like I
Yeah.
can put on the TV, or going to the movies is my favorite.
Yeah.
Just sitting in the movie theater. But yeah, that's always been my escape as well. Music, TV, movies.
That's it.
Um, we're on an old show right now. We're watching One Tree Hill, which
Oh, cool, cool.
everybody might laugh about that one because that's like a high school teenage.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, my daughter
Anyway,
and I, and ever since she was young, we watched all the series that I thought were clean that she could watch, like Bewitched,
this is not clean.
Gilligan's Island, right? Things like that. I Dream of Jeannie. But now she's older, so even though she's 22, it's uncomfortable, some of these scenes and the sex scenes and all this stuff. So we watched Chuck. I don't know if you remember Chuck, the TV show.
Mm,
Oh, you got to see it. It's the funniest thing about a guy, and he gets somehow gets this, like, every spy database downloaded into his brain, so he becomes an asset, and they have to protect him. It's kind of
okay.
comedic and funny, but there's like 6 seasons, and we watched every episode, and we loved it together. It was her and I, our show together. Now we're looking for new things, so we're watching uh Earl, My Name Is Earl, another
Uh huh.
funny comedy. So we
Right.
watch Schitt's Creek, stuff like that. That was
That was a good
hysterical.
one.
Yeah, so
Yep.
anyway, that's my escape, but, yeah, I enjoyed it. I don't know if we have enough time, but, we have till 4, right? We have a
We're good. We're good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, but, also too, I wanted to add one thing. I've been kinda lucky, and this is I wanted to mention this before, that, having a good teacher is, so tough sometimes, and then there are a lot of great instructors out there, and the students don't realize how lucky they are to have a really good teacher, right? So I think that if anyone's listening that's just a martial arts student, or if they're a martial art teacher and they have forgot about that reverence for their teachers and that loyalty and dedication. I have a friend that just bought a school from his teacher, who was my best friend. And in his search for kind of independence, he's owning his own school now. He wants to change certain things. And I'm like, listen, don't throw away the history, the culture, all the stuff that you ever learned, because that reverence that we have for our teachers, it's what makes us different than any other sport or activity, right? And I think that that's the problem with non-traditional martial arts studios, right? They don't, and that's a debatable subject. We could probably spend a whole other 2 hours on me debating tradition and not tradition and all that other stuff. But I remember my teacher when I traveled to Japan, and the culture and the way I was ingrained in the way things were, taught back 30, 40, 100 years ago. And
Hmm.
it enhanced the way I learned. So what I'm saying is, to a student, even if your instructor has never been to Japan and he's an American instructor, but he teaches classically and traditionally, as a student, you should have reverence and make sure that you pay that respect and homage to your teachers, because without that everything else is missed. Like, it's just kind of surface stuff. I learned a sidekick today. That's all it is. I learned how to punch and do a kata today. That's all it is. But when you start to dig into the depth of a relationship with a sensei, and how you have reverence for your teachers, and you love them, and you pay honor and tribute to them, it makes you a deeper, better, more intense martial artist.
Hmm. I agree. One of my favorite things when I was training with my instructor, it was great to learn techniques and learn new forms, but he would always do. So in Tongshito, we have 24 forms,
Hmm.
and it was every Wednesday night. Every Wednesday night, my instructor, Mr. Chikawa, would do his 24 forms.
Oh,
And it wasn't doing the forms that I looked forward to.
Yeah.
It was the time in between forms where we would rest and he would tell me a story. And there
Yeah.
were lots of other people involved. He would tell us a story. He would tell us about training with Chuck Norris, tell us about
Yeah.
what Pat Johnson was like,
Uh-huh.
tell us stories about, the fights that his friends got in.
Yeah.
And that I loved more than anything else because that was where the connection, right? I
Yeah.
learned the forms, I learned the techniques, but having that connection and then having our own stories. And I now find that my students really love to hear,
Yeah.
they love to hear about my instructor. They love to
Right.
hear about those stories. They kind of lean in a little bit more.
Yeah.
And as a father, one of the things that, like, I like to tell my children stories about their grandparents or things. I'm constantly telling them things that we did when we were younger in traditions, and my kids are very, they really embrace our traditions. We didn't have orange cinnamon rolls for breakfast on Christmas because they were all sold out, and my daughter's like freaking out, going,
Right.
"What are we going to do?" Like, like you said, these traditions and embracing all those things. That may be a little bit of a stretch, but I do agree with what you're talking about and what you're saying, and
No,
I
and it's
appreciate it.
funny. I just turned to pull up. I know you love movies, so there's a great movie with Brandon Fraser, and it was about storytelling. And I
Mm,
think he was a wordsmith because back in the day they didn't have movies, so they'd tell stories and you'd listen and he'd build them up, and he would be able to bring stories to life so that they could live the actual story.
mhm.
That's important nowadays. Like we don't have enough of that. Where like that's another thing where teachers need to really connect with their students, right? And I have some students that would be like, I heard that story already. I'm like, but they didn't hear it. Not, like be quiet, but
Mhm.
at the same time, like, for us, having having our history and being able to share it and those stories is what also cements them into the art a little bit more, right? Because I know
Mhm.
I used to love going to the diner or a restaurant with my teacher from Japan, and he would break out a napkin and he would start drawing out the lineage of our system, and then when he was all done showing it to me, he'd crumble it up and throw it on the side, and without him seeing it, I'd grab it. I have a book filled with napkin doodles with him, because I was getting like a history lesson that most
Right.
other people couldn't. I have it documented on paper. It's on a napkin, but it's pretty amazing, right? So those are the things that I think students are missing nowadays. They're missing those movies like we used to watch when we were little, like Chuck Norris Octagon or Kill and Be Killed, or they don't make movies like that anymore. They're either like an action film with martial art moves, but there's never the martial art movie. You know what I mean?
Right.
Where
Right.
it was the lesson of the Karate Kid-ish kind of thing.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Well, look at American Ninja, even that movie. Look at the story that they
Oh my
built
God.
up with him learning blood sport.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was all the art of storytelling. Well, here's another. Professional wrestling has always been a huge thing for me.
Yeah.
And like when you watch a professional wrestling match, most people see a bunch of moves and see, the spots, right?
Right.
But they don't really follow the story sometimes, and the
Right.
story is what makes the match,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so, I I'm all about that. I love the storytelling. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, right? So Star
Yeah.
Wars, like, how do you not get into Star Wars with that huge expanded storyline?
Oh yeah.
And
And
it just really cements it.
that was taken from Samurai too, right?
Yep.
When he wrote that, George Lucas, that was a samurai. He used a samurai as a lot of it. In fact,
Hmm.
right above me on my desk right here, I have two really great pictures of Goldberg, the wrestler, and
Ah,
autographed by him. I was fortunate enough to have him come in and do a seminar at an event I was running in Michigan. And I got to hang out with him and also do some bodyguarding work. Not that he needed it, but just to control crowd activity.
right.
And he gave me these two photos that are hanging on my wall, autographed and signed, which is pretty cool that you mentioned wrestling.
Yeah,
But
very
yeah,
cool.
yeah. So yeah, I guess if we were going to leave off with one thing that would hopefully be something of a message that if I was able to tell, I would tell people to. Here's a little fun little drill. I wrote a book called The Five Gateways to Happiness, a short little 65-page book. And I said there we should write two lists, an I hate list and an I love list, right? It's very easy because negativity is easy. You just start spewing out and throwing up on the page. I hate paying bills. I hate this. I hate that. And you can keep on going until you run out of stuff to hate, right? Then you want to go and write the I love list, which is much more difficult. And you might only have a third of the stuff. I love classical music. I love going out to dinner with my family. I love watching
Hmm.
movies. And you go through that. And then the goal is to take your I hates and take those things and slowly eliminate them.
Mm.
Like a quick story is like, I remember when I first started posting on YouTube, I would get negative people. Oh, you suck. You're terrible. You can't move well. You're a fake. You're a fraud. And I used to stay up at night because, like, for me, it bothered me. I don't know why I took that to heart. So I would try to talk to them and explain to them, and they just come back at me more. So I said, how am I going to stop this? And then I had an epiphany. How about disabling the comment section? And like at the click of a button, I no longer had to deal with this stress. They could thumb up me or thumb down me, but I don't have to hear their personal insults anymore. So I was
Hmm.
able to eliminate that, just by thinking about it. And I would go through my list of I hates until I had hardly any of them there. And the ones that I really hate that I didn't have a choice of getting rid of, I maybe could delegate that to others and share that with others. And then I went to my I love list and tried to enhance that. Like if I loved cooking, and I loved classical music, well, I cooked and listened to classical music at the same time. And I try to enhance all the things that I loved and spent more time doing those things. So if I
Hmm.
could share that one thing with people on a little spiritual lesson, a little practice for the new year, that would be one thing that they could do. But I warn you, don't write the list and then not do anything about it, because it's a waste of your time. Make sure you take an action on the I hates and take an action on the I loves and make your life better.
That's a great exercise. I love exercises like that, so I'm gonna really put that in my notes.
Yeah.
Um, well, we're just a little bit over an hour today, and I want to be respectful of your time and just thank you for being on the show today, sharing and being transparent, letting us know about your successes, your failures. I've really enjoyed getting to know you on a different level, and we,
Thank
we
you.
seem to have quite a bit in
We
common, which
do.
I really enjoy that. So looking forward to continuing to follow you on social media and watching your podcast as well. I
Yeah.
just want to remind everybody that we will be continuing the Master Motivation series in 2022. And just here's a short list of who's coming up in January. We have Dale Jacoby. We got Matt Page, who better known as Master Ken, Bill Clark, Fred DePalma, and Julio Anta. So that's
And
just in January.
And I just saw Master Ken on a show, Big Sky, that I was watching the other day, and I'm like, that's Master Ken in a serious role. And I'm like,
Right?
holy mackerel, he did a great job. But he's a karate owner, school owner, and he,
Uh
it
huh.
was really good. But he's out there in a lot of good movies.
We were watching. It's funny because I think my wife and my daughter and I, we were watching something, and all of a sudden I'm like, that's Matt Page. Like,
Yeah.
and it was in a TV series, really
Oh, okay.
small role. I think he was like a fireman in it or something.
Yeah.
And it just he stuck out. So yeah, we're seeing him all over, and he just did
Yeah.
Paper Tigers, and
Yep.
he's got a lot of stuff coming up. But
Awesome.
hey, thank you so much for your
Thank you.
time. Thank you for all that you're doing for the industry and your community, and all the positivity that you're putting it out there. Just let's keep that up, and if we all put out a little bit more, I think that we can change that. Change that balance of more positivity, less negativity.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for doing this, and keep up the great work. And I appreciate it. If you need anything, you let me know. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank,
Well, thank you so
thank
much.
you.
Wishing you all the best in 2022. And we'll see you guys all next week at 12 p.m. Here at Pacific Standard Time, Master Motivation. And we're out today. Thank you, sir.
Take care. Have a great day. Bye.
All right. You too. Bye bye.